final session of the Information City lectures for the semester. We did them every fall. They used to be the digital divide lectures, but we realized that we have to think in terms of cities and not in terms of individual people with our digital divides in order to really overcome the digital divide. And community informatics which is my corner of GSLIS, I'm cabling my research area, is the latest version of community engagement, community outreach, which is a really long tradition in librarianship. So we always try, because we're focused on community, to be aware of what is happening in communities. We were gratified a couple of years ago because we had Occupy librarians speak to us, and this year we really couldn't have had a bang-up lecture series without addressing what's happened in St. Louis and what is actually happening all over the country as all of these police incidents are coming to light, each one more shocking and horrifying than the last. So, although our communities polarize around these incidents, libraries, institutions have to carry on serving the entire community. So how do they do that? They have to be creative, and they have to base themselves strongly on what their community partners are ready and willing to do. I think this today is going to be really interesting, and in order to get us started, as we always do with our lecture series, a student from the community class is going to introduce the lecture for today. I say lecture, but we usually allow about half an hour for the speaker and then 20 minutes for Q&A. And I know that there's going to be a lively Q&A because a lot of us have been thinking about these issues over the whole semester, if not longer. A special note about Catherine Nancy, who's introducing the speaker, is that she proposed and organized this session. So we rely on students to have more antenna out to figure out what are the topics that we need to cover. And that really should be true in all our classes, and it probably is. But I know it's true in computer informatics. So I'll turn the mic over to Catherine, and then we will go over to the screen. Thanks.
Hi, I'm here to introduce Scott Bonner today. He has been the director of the Ferguson Municipal Public Library since July of this year. He grew up in rural Missouri and went to college in Joplin, and he got his master's through Mizzou. However, he stayed in St. Louis during that time, and he's been in St. Louis for over 12 years. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you. Good day to everybody.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about just kind of the general library's approach to what's been going on in Ferguson. And then, you know, if it's all right, I'd like to turn it over to questions a little quicker than half an hour, because the really interesting stuff comes out in questions, not in you know, preface babbling. Essentially, the general approach has been to be a library, just keep being a library, right? That's step one, is to be open and to be serving people as much as we can. Step two is to do as much for the community as we possibly can, and then yeah. So what I do is every day that I take a look at stay up late till 2 or 3 in the morning watching the Twitter feeds and live streams and the news, judging whether or not it's safe to open. Get up in the morning, do the same thing, and kind of every so often step outside and just maybe walk down the street to the police station and see how things are looking. And because my first priority is make sure it's safe for patrons and staff. And if it is safe for patrons and staff, then we're going to be open. So far, we've only been closed one day, August the 11th. And that's because in the morning, trouble was happening right outside the door. The police were forming a line and pushing protesters up right past the library. And by the time that settled down, I found out the internet had been disconnected, and so we didn't open that day. We would have been a half day if not for the internet thing. And then we did a half day this last Tuesday, the 25th, just because it was really clear that there could be more trouble Tuesday night. And I didn't want to have anyone be stuck trying to go home whenever they didn't feel safe walking out in the parking lot. So we've been open almost every day. We've been offering all of our regular services. And I have made it a point to say yes to everything I possibly can, because I wanted to make sure that when I look back on everything that's happened, that I would regret saying yes too much and not saying no too much, right? And you mentioned earlier about community partners. Absolutely. You know, the main thing the library has done is play a host to a number of different organizations that have come in and volunteers that have come in and do big projects to help the people of Ferguson. You know, and I'm constantly putting out feelers and requesting help and looking for people that I can bring in to do that kind of thing. But in the end, it's the other community partners that do the bulk of the work, right? So when the schools were closed, I'm sure you've all heard part of this, when the schools were closed for more than a week in August, and a teacher came in Monday morning and said, you know, can we have some tables? I have a few teachers. Maybe we can do some tutoring. I was like, no, let's go bigger. Here's a big room. Here's our little room. Here's our student area. Let's bring in everyone we can. And we did. And by the end of the week, we had more than the library could handle. We'd overflowed into the local church. It was a pretty big deal. And, you know, a few weeks ago, when we knew the grand jury decision was coming, I emailed out those people. We had a conference call, the core group, like 5 or 6 of us, that had been instrumental for the first time around. We all got back together. We made a plan. We have we have an understanding that if the schools are closed because of safety concerns and the library has made the determination that to be open, then we have school here, ad hoc school, right? So the kids come in, we ask them what grade they're in, we give them to a teacher that has experience with that grade, they have curriculum to work through, so on and so forth. When businesses were affected, we hosted NCI, North County Incorporated, which is a nonprofit that supports businesses. We hosted them doing listening sessions to ask all those business owners, what do you need right now? We hosted the Small Business Administration for a couple of weeks working out of our auditorium to give out emergency loans. We have hosted Secretary of State's office to preserve vital documents for the businesses, and the Missouri Department of Insurance to help people file their claims. And then we've done a whole lot of things just, you know, generally for the kids, right? So right now just yesterday we announced healing kits, which is, you know, I can describe those to you if you want to hear about it in a little bit. We've got, you know, organizations that are putting together special programs in partnership with us. So we got a Lego thing coming up, which, you know, for a little library like ours, that's kind of neat, because we don't normally get to do really huge programs because we have a small budget and a small staff. For context on that, should probably clarify, our budget's about $400K a year. I am the only full-time employee, and I have about 12 part-time employees that work at the library as well. So, I mean, that's context, and would it be too early to open up to questions? Because I think that's where the interesting stuff happens.
Not at all. Thanks a lot. Let's give a round of applause. When we got to the part about you being the only full-timer and 12 part-timers, this is a lot to carry on, a lot to do with. So that's why you deserve the applause. One of the reasons. Questions? I have some, but I know you all do as well. And I'll do my best to spread the microphone.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just had a quick question about how large the actual physical space you're working with is.
I think we recently took a look at, I think we figured out it was about 6,000 square feet or something like that. It is a one-story building. You can literally see it, the whole library from any point in the library. It's a small library. It's a small town library, right? Except for the meeting room, the auditorium, which holds about 70 and as a max capacity, and it has walls around it. Everything else is visible from anywhere in the library. There is a YouTube video. It is not an exciting YouTube video, but a YouTube video that I made and put up not too long ago that literally just has me walking around and walking around and taking my time describing things took about 8 minutes, and it'll give you a real good sense of the size of the space. We have a side room that holds 15 at max, and we've made good use of that too. And our kids' area is kind of separated off by a glass wall, a partial glass wall, which helps a lot. Going forward, when you go to libraries, if you get a chance to put a wall of some sort, glass wall of some sort between kids' area and adult area, I encourage it because it helps a ton. Unless you have a multi-story library, in which case, sure, go ahead and put the kids on the second floor or whatever.
I have a question about the governance issue, since within the media there's been a lot of discussion about local government in the area. Ferguson, what sort of you have a board of trustees, I assume? Are they appointed, elected, or what's the governance situation?
We are an independent library. We are not a subsection of the city. We have our own taxing district. We collect our taxes directly. Our money never mingles with their money. No one at the library answers to the city. No one at the city answers to the library. There is one connection, and that is that we have a 9-member volunteer governing board, and the board is appointed by the mayor. Okay, so it's an indirect connection. He appoints the board, but the board then is independent, and the library is independent. Now, we have a friendly relationship with the city. The city will do things like give us, a couple of hours of maintenance work for free every month, that kind of thing, because they know it's hard for us to set that kind of thing up, and it's easy for them because they have a huge department that can do it. And whenever the city needs a little help from us, we'll help them too. We are independent enough that whenever the city needed a neutral third party who had no connection to government to host hearings about or sessions about whether or not to expand the city's borders a few months ago, we were one of the alternate sites because we are independent enough that we're not considered in any way connected to the city, theoretically.
As a follow-up then, what's the sense of support from the appointed board for the library's involvement in activities, and what sort of feedback are you getting from the board of trustees?
I couldn't make out all of that. Are you asking for what the community consensus is about the library's activities?
Particularly the board of trustees and the city agencies or the city officials. Is that right?
What they think about it?
Right.
All right, so I can give you 3 things. One is the board seems to be pretty happy with where things are at. All right, I think they have expressed appreciation of my approach of doing everything we possibly can, and they're very, very happy with the response we've gotten from the public in general. The public itself, we see more activity in the library. When we have special events, we're starting to get people. Whenever I started in July, there was like no special programming anymore. There's like the last bits of a summer reading program, but because of dropping budget, they had cut almost every program away completely. And so I'm a different kind of librarian. I'm all about the community and open up programs and do as much as we can. So I started doing whatever programs we could afford and with as many volunteers as we could get. And I think that people are now starting to recognize us as the place for that kind of thing. And so we've been doing that. As far as the city's response to what the library's done, I have no idea. I had a brief and informal chit chat with the mayor when we happened to be at the same taco truck. That is exactly all of the communication I've gotten from or to the city about anything that we've done. The HR guy who helped my board hire me has said that I was a good hire.
How are you? I just wanted to know, I know you talked about their teachers and students coming into the library and there being conversations and at least a focus on curriculum. Can you talk a little bit also about bibliotherapy and what the library is doing right now as far as mental health, considering the trauma that children, young adults, and adults and just the people of Ferguson are dealing with? So what type of bibliotherapy or mental health supports are being in-house? Are there mental health organizations that have volunteered to be in-house to support the people of Ferguson?
Let me give you a few examples of the kind of things we've done. First off, we have made ourselves open meeting space for all kinds of groups that do one-on-one therapy, and for DFS that meets with families and for other things like that. So we have about every day 2 or 3 different, small meetings, individuals meeting with a therapist or a counselor or a helper from the government, or a family or a small group. And that's all happening, that's just us being open and saying yes whenever they ask for a meeting room or a table, that kind of thing. Second, we have I have tried constantly since August to try and get free counseling going in the library, and I haven't been able to do it. I don't know. The number of organizations will say, oh, yes, that sounds great, but they never quite follow through with actually, making a schedule and showing up. So I have failed in that particular piece of what I wanted to do. And then we're doing little things like the healing kits. I should probably describe those now. That's a pretty good example. We just announced them yesterday, so I don't know what kind of uptick they're going to get. But I went and got backpacks made, little backpacks that have the library logo on them. And in that backpack, we put 2 or 3 books that are all about emotional healing, right? Just literally coping books, emotional intelligence kind of stuff for little kids, picture books, as well as a handful of worksheets that are about working through your feelings, a list of counseling resources in the area for the parents that are either free or sliding scale, and a sheet describing what's in the kit, and a stuffed animal, right? And the whole idea is that the parent or child will come in, check out the kit, have it for 2 weeks, and when they return it, they return the backpack and the books, but they keep everything else, the information about counseling, the stuffed animal, whatever else, the worksheets. I hope that will do some good. But like I said, we just now announced it, so I don't know how it's going. Those are a few examples. I mean, we've done other stuff too, but not that's coming immediately to mind.
I'm just curious as to whether or not St. Louis County Public Library has either reached out for partnership or vice versa, if there's any kind of collaborative relationship with them.
So were you asking, all right, you're asking if we've been cooperating with county? Is that right? Okay.
Library, yeah, the county public library system.
Yeah, they take a different approach to things. So they have done some stuff, but not, but because they're not actually, all right. So when the county formed way back, 8 or 9 municipalities within the St. Louis County said, no, we want to stay independent and have a library that answers just to us, right? That speaks to us. And so we stayed independent. Therefore, the county library takes a different approach because they're kind of on the fringes of the affected areas. They're not right in the middle of it. And so they're not doing the kind of, they're doing great programming, but they're not doing the kind of intensive programming that we are. I have reached out to the director of the county library system, and we've had a few conversations about safety and about the things to consider about whether to open the library. And we've got a general understanding that if we can think of a good way to cooperate, we will. But we haven't really done any big programs together. And that's partly just because I've been just so focused on right here and now and the space 2 miles around me or 4 miles or whatever miles it is right around me, this colored spot on this map behind me. I'm so focused on that I'm not really thinking too much about outside of where the county library sits.
I'm sorry, in the back.
Hi, Scott. Could you tell us a little bit about the fundraising that's happened recently and the donations that have come into the Ferguson Library?
The donations that have come in have been mind-boggling, right? So back in August when we did the big school thing, people really appreciated it. And we got like $12,000 worth of donations, which we thought was amazing because normally we get like maybe $3,000 of donations in a given year. And a ton of books, like a couple of cartloads of books. For whatever reason, maybe it's because it's the second time that we're coming up into the news. I don't know. Maybe it's because last time I redirected all the media toward the teachers and let them do their talking, and this time all the media wanted to talk to me specifically. For whatever reason, the library has, well, all right, for whatever reason, we are being given much love through social media and through donations. We have raised $300K, more than $300,000 through PayPal, which is almost our whole budget, right? And an unknown amount through snail mail, probably going to be, probably 10, 15,000 through snail mail, and a little bit through Bitcoin. That all started rolling totally without me, like on its own. I noticed whenever the grand jury announcement came on Monday, one of the first things I said is, hey, everyone, I know everyone else is closing, but we're going to stay open. We're going to do our normal hours, and you're welcome to come here. And I think that, and then the next day we did school because the schools closed because of security concerns, but we were able to be open, so we did school. I saw a lot of retweeting of those things on Twitter, and then I saw a lot of retweeting of those things with an addendum to donate to the library. Then I saw a lot of tweets from famous people saying, hey, donate to the library, they're doing good work. And it just kind of ballooned up totally, or as far as I can tell, organically, grassroots kind of thing. And it's just been amazing. And at this point, we're thankful for every darn bit of it, but we're also looking at hundreds of packages of donated books in our office. And we're like, I don't know when we're going to process these. Yeah. I've been begging for any local catalogers to come help us out, and we'll pay you. Please come help us out, because we need all the help we can just to process these books through. And I should tell you about the books that we're getting. And back in August, a woman named Angie Manfredi, who is Miss Kubelik on Twitter, immediately started putting together, with approval from me, but really this is her baby. She put together a reading list or purchase list through Powell's Books of books for kids dealing with civil rights history, civic engagement, recovering from trauma, and just generally books with a lot of diversity to them. This is something that she cares deeply about, and so she grabbed onto that opportunity, and we were so thankful for her. Because at this point, once we get these things processed, we're going to have one of the strongest collections in the state on those areas, right? She is now continuing to do that work. She has list number 4, I think, that they're working through right now, which is the same kind of areas, only now focused more on adult books, right? In addition to that, we've got a couple of different book drives going on that's getting books to us, including one that, that is encouraging authors to send signed copies of their own books to us, and so we're getting a lot of those. I did a Reddit AMA last week sometime, Saturday maybe, Sunday, I forget which, and John Green, who wrote The Fault in Our Stars, jumped on there and said he's going to send us a copy of all of his signed books. So I could not have conceived of such generosity. If you'd asked me what's the most generous you think the world could be to our little library, a month ago, I'd have been like, maybe someday we'll get $10,000 again. That would be cool. But now we've gotten, 30 times that. And I'm going to, all right, so we're meeting with the board on Monday. The board is meeting on Monday, I should say, and we're going to try and pin down a plan for this money so that it's used responsibly. Because, libraries, we are frugal to a fault, and we get every penny, or the most of every penny that we get. And so I intend to be just that way with this money too. Yes, we got a lot of money, but that doesn't mean we're going to waste any of it. And so we're going to sit down with the board. I've got my pitch toward them, which is going to be that, every year, first off, I want to get a children's librarian, a second librarian in the building, please. because right now all the program that we're doing is just what I can squeeze in between director duties. And a dedicated children's librarian who's actually a pro at this can do a whole lot more and a whole lot better than I do. So I want to get a children's librarian in here. And I think this one-time windfall of money doesn't give us a children's librarian long-term, but it can help supplement the budget for a few years. And that gives me time to rearrange things enough that our ongoing budget will still allow for a full-time librarian. I want to make sure we put enough aside that we don't have to worry about whether or not the library is going to trough too low. One thing is that we have to consider as a director is that we have this kind of yearly cycle of money where the money that we're paying out comes out, half of it in the first half of the year, but we don't actually get any tax money until, usually about this time of year. And so there's a bottom out point, right? Where there's so little in the library's bank account that if something happens, we're kind of out of luck. So I want to make sure that some of that stays in the account so that we don't trough out quite so low. And then after that, we're going to look at capital improvements. I've got a carpet that is stained, has big holes, has weird patches in it, has parts of it are just kind of dangerous to walk across, and we have to tape things down and that kind of stuff. So we may talk about doing new carpet. We have heating, cooling units on the roof from the 1980s. It would be nice to update one of those, that kind of thing. So boosting programming however we can, that's going to be my first priority. And then the kind of long-term changes that will help the library for the next 10, 20 years, right? Like new carpet and heating, cooling units and that kind of thing. One thing, speaking of donations, one thing that I just got word from yesterday, and so it's not really official yet, is that one of the people that that the library caught the eye of, that tweeted about donating, was Mark Andreessen, who is one of the great gurus of Silicon Valley. He founded Mozilla Firefox, right? He emailed me yesterday, and like I said, it's not real yet, so don't tell the free world, but he emailed me yesterday saying that he's on the board of HP, and they would probably be willing to give us carte blanche to redo our computers. And considering that my network right now is a snarl of miscellaneous cables, and my computers are all kind of a half-functioning hodgepodge of computers that no one quite knows when they were bought, because they're that old, yay. I'm a tech guy, so yay, that whole idea. All right, so, yeah, we're doing pretty darn well right now.
Oh, I did too. Thanks for this wonderful example of the engaged library and community-led library services. What advice do you have for us as we prepare students to go out to follow your role model and do things like this wherever they end up?
Golly, I guess just, pay attention to your community. I mean, all right, so I've had people ask me, are you an activist librarian? And I haven't actually followed the library literature since I graduated from college, so I have no idea if I'm an activist librarian. I haven't actually been reading about that. But, whenever they ask me that, I think, I don't know, but I'm just a librarian. This is what we do, right? This is what libraries do every day. So just do what libraries do, The whole point is to help people, human beings. As long as you're thinking about human beings, you're going to be fine. Yeah, and be really frugal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kind of a
follow-up to that question, is there anything in particular in your education or your experience that has prepared you for this moment?
Well, when I worked at Richmond Heights, for the last 7 years, I worked at Richmond Heights Library, which is in the middle of the county. And I was the adult services provider, so I do know how to put together a program. And I did a lot of the supervising and the schedule making and that kind of thing. So that gave me at least a toe into what a director does. And I've been able to kind of lean on my former boss for advice and that kind of thing. As far as preparing me for responding to what has happened in Ferguson, I don't know that anything could prepare me for that, other than being through that kind of thing previously, which I haven't. So there is a kind of, this is going to sound, I don't know how this sounds, but there's a kind of an ethical justice position to take that I think is, in my case, informed by, my own, interest in the philosophy of ethics and morality. That informs the decisions that I make. I care a lot about the ethics of the library profession. And so I am weighing those issues whenever I make decisions a lot of times, and my obligations to this versus that versus the other, and trying to prioritize those things. So, I mean, there's an intellectual background that is thanks in large part to library school, in large part to just me taking a whole lot of classes on philosophy of ethics, that makes ethics part of the decision making that I do, and the sense of justice and what is or is not justice a part of the decision making that I do. Yeah. So yeah, I guess, does that answer the question? Okay.
We had a PhD student years ago who did a case study of a library in the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, that was near Chernobyl. And one of the things that public library found itself doing was patrons were coming in to talk about their health problems, and they discovered that the community didn't have its own data about what health problems were arising. And they needed that sort of data in order to make the argument to the authorities that they needed more investment in health solutions. So their library really had to reorient its collection development, its programming, and probably even its technology, although the dissertation didn't cover that, on account of the Chernobyl disaster and the impact it had on the local community. So it seems to me that what's happened, it's been happening so fast, it's hard to stay on top of it, but your collection is changing, your programs are changing. And Mark Anderson, we have to mention that he is a U of I grad. Your technology is changing, and I really hope that you, maybe it's that you have a moment to step back and use that philosophizing that you describe as your foundation. You're thinking about ethics. Maybe it's recruit whatever library students you can. And there is a library school in Missouri to help you do this. But think about, what does this redefine the public library? Because you are not the only community that's suffering this experience. And it would really be interesting to know how the other libraries are coping with it. Staten Island, for instance, or whatever. But we always have to update, I think, what a library is. So you do that theorizing on the basis of data, right, which is your own experience. But the other thing is, you talked about the phenomenal response of the world, right, through donations of books and money. What about the response of residents of Ferguson? That is also, they are your patrons, they are your local community. What are they saying when they see what how the library has speedily adjusted to new conditions?
Who is that you're asking about response? Because your
local residents, your patrons, your longtime patrons, your local patrons.
Local patrons, you said?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. So first off, going back a bit, to even be mentioned in the same breath as the librarian near Chernobyl is kind of freaky. Seriously, this is not Chernobyl. I was asked to be on a panel a while back of librarians who deal with crisis, and they had me on a panel. It didn't quite work out perfectly, but they were going to have me on a panel with a librarian from the Ukraine, or they did have me on a panel with a librarian from the Ukraine. I'm like, this is not even on the same scale as the Ukraine, right? This is just, perspective, people. We're just doing what a library does, right? As far as local response, well, we've had increased activity, and we've had a lot of people coming in and asking how they can help. We've had a lot more volunteers. We've had people giving us encouragement. And we've had controversy too. Not everything has been roses. We were one of 14 venues for a art display called Hands Up, Don't Shoot, Artists Respond, put on by the Alliance of Black Art Galleries, right? So we've got like eight works of art hanging up in the library right now. They're just phenomenal. But before the actual art came up, the title of the art show came out, and I had a number of patrons come to me and say, oh, they were very, very mad about the idea that the library is taking a political position on this, and how dare we be anti-police and that kind of thing. So there have been also, that's the only really negative one, is that this kind of small, about 8 people or so came to complain to me, but they were very fiery 8 people, unhappy with the title of that art show, and that we had hosted the art show, compared to 30 different people, 50 maybe more, that said, oh, good job, right? The other thing, the audio on my end is not that great. It's kind of muddled, but it sounds like you were saying something about the changing nature of libraries, and I don't know a whole lot about the changing nature of libraries, because I've only really thought about my approach to librarianism, libraryship, whatever that word would be. And I would say that the way I approach it is this, right? A library is an institution that has a few specific goals, and we meet those goals however we can, right? The goals are continuing education. There's a weird noise coming through. All right. The goals are continuing education.
The audio. We're trying to improve the audio. That's why.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep on babbling and hope you all can hear me. The goals are continuing education, cultural literacy, and being a center point or a center or a nexus for the community, especially for the intellectual work of the community. Everything we do is a means toward that end, right? So, I have had 5 billion people online say, there's still a library? Seriously? Who reads books anymore, right? And I just have to say, a lot of people, right? We still have a collection, and it still gets used. Thank you. And probably will be for quite a while. But the books are a means to the end, right? It's a signature service of the library, the first thing that we do, the last thing the library does before budget cuts shut them down. It's what we, start and end with. But it is still just a means to the end. The end is continuing education and cultural literacy, right? So the means will change over time. Going online, doing more kind of community work kind of stuff. The means will change over time, but as long as there is the ends that a community cares about, cultural literacy, continuing education, and having a kind of intellectual nexus, then libraries will do fine. We will adapt as needed. I am maybe a little more eager to adapt than some other librarians, but in the end, that's the way it's going to be, right? As long as the community cares about those things, the library will be fine, and we will adjust as needed.
Thanks. Don't be shy.
Just as a follow-up to response you've received, I wonder if you could comment on what responses you've received, say, from the Missouri Library Association or the American Library Association.
So from the American Library Association, they've retweeted some of the things that we've tweeted out. They've said some encouraging things. They've been generally supportive. The Missouri Library Association, I can't recall anything specific. I've had other people encourage me to go to the next MLA conference and talk, but I haven't actually heard anything from them. We have the MPLD, which is the Missouri Public Library Directors Conference that happens twice a year, and I got an invitation, and they said they would waive my fee, but it happened now, and so there was no way, right? I kind of have to be here right now. And the Missouri State Librarian, the Missouri has a state library. It's really more of a, well, I don't want to pinhole or pigeonhole the Missouri State Library. I'm sure that they think they're doing a whole lot of great things, and I'm sure that they are. But we don't have a really robust state library like many states do. But they have come through and offered us grants that would help us redo technology and pay for some programming. I haven't grabbed that and ran with it yet because they just now told me about it last week, but we're getting some support from the state library as well in the form of grant money once we fill out that grant.
Okay, another question from me. Could you describe and just give some examples of the response from your staff? Because your staff has had to really adjust its schedule and its daily grind. Tell us some stories about your staff.
I think that my staff, all right, for the most part, the general response has been to be both energized and exhausted. But what's going on? And so you see enthusiasm, and people are really glad about the kind of things the library is doing. And they seem to like my approach to things. I hear good response, and I am the kind of manager that goes and asks them about every little thing, their opinion on things, and kind of constructs things around what they tell me. So that's all very positive. But at the same time, when we don't have enough staff people for me to overstaff us. I can, to deal with increased demand. And so I staff as much as I possibly can, but we just haven't had enough of a breath for me to hire new people or, a sense of budget until this last week. So we'll see. Maybe we'll change up that. But so the staff have been tired out and exhausted, and I have too, we are all wearing a little thin, and we need to regroup. And so, my hope is that circumstances beyond our control will improve to the point where we can, continue serving the community as much as we can, but hopefully that crush of demand, the crush of need will reduce, and we can all breathe a bit. Eventually we're going to go, well, we are right now, we are a normal library. But we're a normal library with a lot of demands put on us. And eventually we're going to be more like a normal library's demands. And I think we're all eager to help every way we can. But there's some part of us that wants to take a good deep breath and stop a bit.
In that regard, have you seen individuals from the profession or from library schools that have come in to pitch in? Could you talk a bit about that?
Come into what?
Coming in to help.
Oh, yeah. We have a few people that have come in to help shelve. We got 3 people, I think, that volunteer a few hours each shelving for us per week. There is one library student through Mizzou that actually, takes their classes here in St. Louis, who comes in when she can. What she's doing is taking a good look at our children's collection to try and spot holes, because she knows more about that than I do. And we're hoping that we can turn that into a practicum, so she'll get some credit next semester for doing that. We have one cataloger for the St. Charles City County system who has come in a half dozen times and done a few hours here and there to help catalog stuff. And a few others. There's a children's librarian with the St. Louis Public Library system that comes in every other Friday and spends about an hour doing crafts with whoever kids are here, right? And that kind of thing. We have a lot of little things like that. Unfortunately, none of it's The programming stuff is catch as catch can, because it's happening through volunteers and we schedule things, and so it's hard to say come in every Friday at 3:00 and we'll have an event for you, because my person who comes in on Fridays might not be able to come this Friday. So we're kind of, there's a downfall to trying to do programming with volunteers, which is part of the reason that I'm giddy at the chance to get a children's / programming librarian in, because then we can have that backup person for everything and stability in the programming that we offer. Does that answer the question, or is there more?
Definitely, yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Question? Yeah. Oh, no one has a question.
I had a quick question. So I was wondering if in programming you've thought at all about intergenerational dialogues about what's happening in Ferguson. You have people who may have experienced similar incidences in the past, people with experience growing up during the civil rights struggles, and past moments. Has that ever come up in terms of programming with people suggesting the library as a space for people to talk across generations?
I'm sorry, but that whole question was garbled and echoey and strange.
I think, let me just repeat the question. Have you seen any impulses towards dialogues about what is happening, particularly intergenerational dialogues that can be informed by people who experienced the civil rights movement and so on?
In the library itself, what I've seen is that patrons are glad to take advantage of the whole idea of the quiet oasis. And so when they're actually in the library, they're not talking about what's going on outside. Generally, they're being, if anything, particularly kind of respectful and thoughtful about each other when they're in the library. At the same time, in Ferguson in general, and in a lot of the special events that we've been having where we're like hosting the NAACP and hosting various orgs, there's a lot of heavy discussion about that history, how it connects to the history of the movement, what's going on right now, what to think about the different tactics that various groups are taking right now, and how to move forward and actually achieve some ends, some goals. So that discussion is perpetual and constant here in Ferguson with various groups of people who want to improve the community. And, like I said, in special programming that happens here at the library, in day-to-day moments, everyone seems to want to use us as that quiet place rather than use us as the sounding board.
Well, if I could just tag on to that question, what about the 8 people who came to you and complained about the art exhibit? What was your dialogue with them? And then if you had a moment to think about it since then, what more would you have liked to have said to them that you might not have at the time?
With which organization did you say?
The 8 people who came in, you said it was roughly 8 people who complained about the art exhibit.
Oh, what was that conversation like?
Yeah, and was there more that you would have liked to have said to them that came to you later?
I was as open and honest and frank as I possibly could be with them, with every one of them. So there's nothing really that I left on the table, so to speak, in those conversations. And they got my whole philosophy. They got why I said yes to the program, why I think the program will help the community, how it ties into, the cultural literacy aspect of a library, that this is just a coup. This is a wonderful thing for a library to do. And, there's nothing that I regret not saying to them because I just said it all. And they came away pretty much to a person. They all came away with a idea of, I still think you did the wrong thing, but I understand why you did it. So, and that's pretty much the biggest victory I could have gotten, considering how hot they were coming in. And that's really about, that ties into, politics as an issue in Ferguson. At this point, there's nothing anyone can say that won't be political. There's nothing anyone can do that won't be political. I mean, the idea of showing art that lets people process and think about what's going on outside seems like a no-brainer for a librarian like me. But there's no way that is not going to be seen in a political context. People say innocent and well-meaning and inclusive and nice things all the time, and there's always someone there who's willing to mind read their motivations, make presumptions, and turn it into a political thing. It's just the nature of the environment right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that and touching on how at this point in Ferguson, you really saying conversations are going to be heavily political. Have you discussed, and I'm just going on my own experience, I know working in the public library, there were some things that we were encouraged not to talk about. So have you had a conversation?
I missed all of that.
Oh, I think we lost you. We can't hear you anymore. Somehow let's see it. Can you hear us? Can you say something into the mic? I think we may have lost your audio.
My audio?
We can't hear him. I think something must have happened with
What do you
this.
say? I don't think you can hear me. He just now can hear me.
Can you hear me?
We can't hear you. I'll chat that.
1 minute.
Okay.
What do you recommend we do?
Can you can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Can you in the lower left side of your screen, you should see a microphone button. Can you press that, and that should bring up a dialogue for you to test the mic.
Okay, I just muted and unmuted.
I also I've opened up a chat window. We can't hear you right now. You may if you can chat back.
Chat back your answer. But why don't you?
Maybe we should just go ahead and continue on, and maybe you can chat back your answer if we can't hear you via the microphones.
Okay. Are you encouraging employees to talk about what's going on with each other or with patrons, or has there been a discussion about keeping the conversation at minimum? I'm interested in how you all as staff are discussing the issues that are going on right now.
So we may be going to chat now. I think he's typing a response. Okay, so I don't know if you all can read that back there, I'm not sure how, but he wrote back, we have a standard of not having political discussions at the desk, otherwise all good, as long as we respect each other's space.
So that's interesting that the community topic of the moment is so difficult to handle even on at the staff level. It's almost like an opportunity for professional development, and you don't even have time for that. Is that how you see it? Or?
Can you all read that? I'm not sure. Okay, my staff members are free to be as active as they want on any position. Some of our staff members are active with protest daily, others are not. I missed the last question, please repeat. So I think, Kate, you had a follow-up question. I don't think that went through.
I do, and my question was really to as I was phrasing it, I'm thinking I'm asking the impossible, but I see lots of opportunities for professional development in our field so that we are more prepared for these kind of polarizing moments without, we're able to talk about things behind the desk.
Yeah, right away response now. You are correct. Lots of issues have come up that have allowed us to clarify the library's rules and priorities. At the same time, we have been too in the moment to approach the issue systematically. So kind of, yeah.
Well, listen, we have overstayed, we've overflowed our time because it's so interesting. And our technology has failed us, so I think we need to, almost failed us. So I think we need to close up. But I want to once again thank you very much for taking your precious time to talk to us. Thank you. And we feel like this is only a step in an extended dialogue to have about these and many related issues. So thank you.